please start the recording, which is for the purpose of if anyone else wish to view the workshop. So the agenda for today is introduction, a quick overview about the industry and the Cascal timelines, a little bit about project governance and the next steps. I think it will take less than 30 minutes, so there's plenty of room for question and answers. And if I may ask you to hold those to the end, and then we'll circle back to the slides in order to give you some context of the for you who have not met me before. And I'm the Cascal MPS project manager and your host for today's workshop. I've also got with me Sanket Bhatt, who is the product owner. I got Pallavi Kapoor, who is the senior manager at Payment Services. We've got Charlene Watford, who's a product manager. We've got Sri Gangshuti, who is assistant product manager, and we've got Rishi Amin, who is the strategy and architect. You may also see project coordinators here, which is a role that will be coming in the new year, and we will be assigning each of you, the clients, and I will touch a little bit more upon that later in the pack. Just as a quick overview, I'm sure you're all aware of this already, but for the sake of the overview, MPP currently supports credit payments or push payments. As you know, with MPS, we will provide the capability of a debit-like payment. And this will be done through NPP, through payment initiation messages with a customer authorized payment arrangement, which is very similar to the authority that a customer signs for a DA or DE today. There'll be a centralized database stored at MPPA for all of the mandates. A large number of business rules, of course, associated with these and APIs. At the very bottom of this slide, I've also thought worthwhile mentioning a couple of use cases that MPS will enable, but there's certainly many more than the 4 that I've listed below. And one of the most typical one that people will think about when we talk about MPS is scheduled and recurring payments. Moving on, in terms of Cascal Payer Services overview that we will provide, is an orchestration of mandate-related notifications and messages between Cascal and payer clients, and the MMS or the MPP mandate management system. Cascal will also provide an easy plugin, customer channel services for the client's digital channels. We are adding MPS services to the existing MPP payments platform and enhancing existing payments as well to fit in with the MPS solution. As a managed service overview, our existing Cascal MPP hub will be updated and is in the progress of being updated to support mandated data, disputes and payment exceptions. Our client team will continue to provide, of course, back office support. We will provide reports for reconciliation of mandates, and we'll continue, of course, to collaborate with our clients to ensure that your solution meets the rules and industry codes for mandates and mandated payments. In terms of giving you a little bit more context about client onboarding and the release timeline for APIs, I thought I'd show you the NPPA delivery timeframes, which overall is a construction phase that goes up until end of October. Within that construction phase, there are two key testing phases, which are termed solar testing and body testing. They are entirely Cascal activities, which is to test out the system before we go into deploying the solution in production at the end of October 2021. The timeline that's probably far more interesting to you is this particular timeline, and the arrow that may be culminating is probably another word that I was looking for, in integration testing and onboarding. Integration testing is scheduled to commence from 1st of July through to end of August. And the onboarding is scheduled to, of course, happen after Cascal deploys and throughout the month of November 2021. The purpose of the two first arrows in this diagram is to show you that API payer swaggers will be available and are available already on the Developer Hub in a light version. And as you move towards the right of the arrow, the swaggers are maturing. But in terms of payer swaggers, they are currently all in the Developer Hub, which is primarily of interest to your service provider because this is a very technical document. The test APIs will be made available from end of February, and again, same concept. The left hand of the arrow is a light version, and it's maturing over time as you move towards the end of the right-hand side of the arrow. I know that another document that is being sought by your service provider is, of course, the payer development guide. That is slotted to be released in February together with the APIs. However, I am looking at providing versions similar to the API Swagger arrows, where we're providing potentially a light version of the payer developer guide in early January. And again, that developer guide will then be maturing up until the date we've nominated here by this particular flag, which is towards the end of February, together with when the APIs are released. In terms of Cascal documentation and client documents, a business consideration document will be released in February or thereabouts, if not earlier, together with the APIs. The final version of the payer product description will be provided by 22nd of December. And the CX guidelines, I believe, have been shared via the developer webinar that happened back in October. I don't believe they exist on the portal as yet, but they will in the very near future. But certainly the webinar for the developers, which I think you were invited to as well, will have these CX guidelines. Technical documentation I've already covered. Where I can see them, I think, is old hat for most of you. Technical documentation, typically on the Developer Hub, Word documents and client documents through the Cascal portal. When am I getting them? I think we have covered two, so I'm going to jump those couple of bullet points. In terms of governance, an implementation coordinator, and I touched upon this briefly in the introduction. An implementation coordinator will be allocated to all of the Cascal clients, and they will take you through the MPS journey up until the launch in December 2021. And the intent is that the coordinator will be your single point of contact for the MPS project. However, I am of course available as well, and as is your account manager. And in the last bullet point, we've also listed, of course, the email address that you can use at any time to raise questions, etc. There will be an implementation manager who will be responsible for communication to clients via webinars and on a quarterly basis. And the next one is slated for March 2021. There will also be workshops scheduled with service providers, of course. And the senior solution architects, of course, will be a part of those workshops / webinars as well. The implementation coordinator will also schedule fortnightly project meetings with the purpose of providing updates and address issues and risks. We will also work with the service provider to align and agree delivery dates, keeping in mind, and I can't stress this enough, the NPPA mandated milestone dates. Moving along further, a second slide on governance. In terms of Cascal project monitoring, we have an MPS steering committee that meets on a monthly basis and is attended by the leadership team of Cascal and key senior Cascal staff that are involved in the MPS project. We also provide status reporting to MPPA on a monthly basis, as well as a quite comprehensive report on a quarterly basis. Our head of product also attends the NPPA steering committee. In terms of risks, I thought it was pertinent to highlight the one risk that has the potential to prop up. I don't have any evidence at this point in time that it will, but for larger programs like this, there is always a risk along this line that there is an industry delay. But as I said, I don't have any evidence that this will happen at this point in time. It obviously is not within the Cascal control because the risk would eventuate if a large number of participants are unable to meet the mandated dates. And I'm sure that will be highlighted through the NPPA steering committee for this particular project. Previous Cascal engagements that's occurred has been a developer webinar back in October, and there have been a number of workshops that has been progressed throughout later part of November and early December. In terms of next steps, as I mentioned before, there will be a workshop / webinar in early March 2021. What we would like from you, the clients, and I realize, of course, this is tightly coupled to a service provider, is release windows. As you may recall, the tight time frame between Cascal going live on the 31st or thereabouts October and 3rd of December, I'd like to do some very, very early planning. And so if you could provide potential release windows for yourselves, that'd be fantastic. I also would like to understand a bit more where you, the clients, are at in the MPS journey. You may be, and I don't have visibility at this point in time of this, but you may be at a funding stage. you may have progressed much further than that into design, etc. So would appreciate feedback along that line. If there are dependencies, risks and issues that you have in your risk issue, in your register, risk and issue register, and if you're willing to share those, would appreciate that as well, because I can use the same to communicate with MPPA, as well as it highlights potential challenges that we have as a total community, MPS community. We also would appreciate if you are able to return, if you have not already, return the variation letter by the due date, which I believe is 29th of January 2021. And of course, we also look forward to you being available for future workshops, webinars, and meetings. By the end of next week, we'll provide you, if not before, the 18th of December, a feedback form where you can provide all of the above information. And it would be highly regarded if you could return this, and please use the NPP support the mailbox for that, but it would be fantastic if you could return, because in order to assist, we need that feedback from you. And that basically leads me to the last slide, which is question and answers. But before I open up the floor, I would like to explore the commitment to the MPS development and timelines a little bit more with you, the clients. Would you be able to share something online here in this call for us? Anyone who wants to go first, please? No, Sanket, if you could assist me, because I can't see people raising hands or questions whilst I'm in a display mode of the pack. So if you could help me there, that'd be much appreciated. Are there any questions? Sanket, could you just confirm that you can hear me, because I'm getting worried I hear no one, so.
Matt, I think Sanket is not in this meeting.
Oh, isn't he? He should be. Right, okay, then never mind. If you could help me, Sri.
Yes.
So I'm opening up the floor. Are there any questions?
I haven't seen any hands up or any questions in the chat window, Matt.
Right. Is there anyone that's willing to elaborate on where you are in the development cycle of the project?
Matt, it's Tony from People's Choice. Since I know what else is saying, we've actually already started some of this work. We've briefed our executive. We have got initial seed funding to do that, and we'll be working on the final stage. So the SOW and everything is already being looked at and everything. So we should, sorry for the variation letter is being done. We're also working with Fiserv as one of our providers to get that done. So we're moving down that path, and we're starting to get resources now working on that part of it.
Oh, excellent. Beautiful. Thank you for that, Peter. That's much appreciated. Anyone else that wish to contribute?
Hi, Matt. This is Carolyn, just speaking for RICQ. So we're kind of more or less in the same SOW stage with Fiserv. So at the moment, we're working closely with Veronica for the results of the Fiserv analysis. But at the same time, we're also internally lining up our resources to hopefully start work early next year.
Great, and thank you, Carolyn, so much for that. Do we have anyone else that wish to provide an update? Pallavi, do you have any questions you may wish to ask?
It's Charlene here. Maybe I don't know if Veronica's on the call at all from Fiserv. Maybe it'll be good to know any call outs from you and concerns, because we know there is other technical documentation that we are working on that needs to be rolled out. In particular, the developer guide, as Matt's actually talked about. So it'll be good to hear from you, and you may have already communicated this in other workshops as well. Just any concerns that you may have at all, or risks that you want to highlight around the delivery timeframes or anything at all, Veronica?
Yes, hi Charlene. Yeah, I'm on the call. Yes, I guess overall, at this point in time, just to echo what Tony and Carolyn was saying, we're looking at the analysis of the APIs, but more in the sense of trying to understand what the best integration design is. So we haven't actually gotten to a detailed analysis of the APIs. It's more about trying to understand the approach. And as you say, Charlene, I guess with the staggered approach of releasing documentation, it does mean that we iteratively need to analyse parts of the solution. And so that is a risk for us, because we can't forecast what is required in terms of resourcing and effort. You know, as you can probably appreciate, there's a pipeline of work that we've already scheduled for next year, and it's quite difficult to understand where the MPS work is going to fit into that, and where the heavy lifting is going to be done from the perspective of the fact that we have multiple teams that work on different parts of our system. So at this stage, it's too early to understand whether there's a timeline risk, because we don't know enough to ascertain that. And also, as documents come through to us, that risk could iteratively come back up over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually, the type of feedback that we're after as well, so that we can obviously look at what we can do in any way to try and speed things up where possible. But that's good feedback. Thank you.
So thank you, Veronica. And as I mentioned earlier, anything we can do to release, in particular, the technical documentation, that is the developer guide earlier, we will. And you're not the only one providing exactly that feedback, so it's certainly taken seriously. And whatever we can do to release that early, we will. And as I also mentioned, the technical documentation in terms of the swaggers, for payer swaggers, they are already available on the Developer Hub. But anything we can do, Veronica, to assist you further, please feel free to reach out directly. Happy to work, and I'm sure the rest of the team will too, trying to make the journey as easy as possible.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Pallavi, do you want to ask anything before we let the clients go?
Yeah, and apologies because I had to attend another call, so I'm not sure if clients have already spoken up to talk about dependencies and risks and other considerations. So yes, while we absolutely hear loud and clear the dependency on the core banking service providers and need to factor that in terms of a timeline perspective, I was keen to understand from a commitment and resourcing and schedule perspective from our clients. I would love to hear how you guys are feeling and in terms of when you can return those signed variation letters, and generally if you're able to commit to our schedules that we've shared today on this call.
So Pallavi, I think Tony and Carolyn provided an update in terms of where they're at in the development cycle, which is an SOW stage. And please correct me if I remember the wrong thing, Carolyn and Tony. In terms of the, I'm just lost the word that I was planning on saying. And so in terms of risks and issues, I think Veronica just touched on it in terms of documentation and where it leads them in the development cycle.
Also to add, Mats, I know Veronica has shared a bunch of questions which we have responded to you, Veronica, and I think I've CC'd even the clients in that to keep the clarity and transparency. So along with that, shared even the copy of CX guidelines, product description, and I think a few other details around how we have tried to consider some of the principles within our design to take away the operational overhead from the clients and from your end. So hence, I think that is also one of the reasons that you're seeing the documentation in certain fashion that's getting released right now. So yeah.
So Pallavi, it's Tony. Just to give you a bit of a more, our biggest risk we've got is our transform project. So obviously we're going through a full replacement with our core upgrade, with our middleware changes, with potentially some front end changes, our CRM. So we are slightly restricted in where we go with that side of it because subject to when they roll that out, we've also got data center moves. So we've got a lot of contingencies, I guess, going to have to be built into that. So if something doesn't get done by the scheduled time frame, we'll have to work our way around it. So that's probably our biggest one. In regards to the variation letter, we'll have that back to you by the due date. It's just we just try to work our way through everything else at the moment, and probably we need to put up a business case once we start to get the technical aspects, and obviously working with Veronica and our other vendors to actually know exactly what we're up for. So.
Yeah, sure. And would you have to take this to your board for approval, Tony?
Subject to what the dollar amount is of everyone's work. It could sit within our executive, but I'm predicting it probably will go close to board level authorization.
Okay. So from a commitment perspective, you have all the intent and from a formal business case perspective, you will just have to go through that process.
Yeah, correct. So we've basically got initial funding already for the letter of variation, so the customer component. We're working with Veronica at the moment on the Fiserv component. And we've just got to work with the other vendors now to get that pricing to know what we can put up in the full business case. But we've got initial funding for it anyway.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. Obviously, we'll endeavour to close the loop, and that's our responsibility to work closely with the service providers and flag any of those like potential risks and dependencies with industry bodies accordingly. But yeah, the sooner we can provide kind of the developer guide and things like that, will help, I guess, Fiserv in giving you a better indication of cost as well, I guess.
Thank you, Pallavi. And if I could take the opportunity to stress as well, please use the feedback form to provide the information we talked about, and we will use that to certainly make your case and put it in our status reports that goes up to MPPA. Because if we do that, and if everyone do that, then MPPA gets a proper visibility of what the issues is across the industry. So yeah, please help us with that. It would be much appreciated. Are there any other questions before we wrap up? I take the silence as no, and I thank you so much for your attendance and looking forward to working with you throughout the MPS journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.